Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here today on Conscious Business Zone with Sandra Champlain. How are you, Sandra? I have to tell you, they're saying they only see me. They're saying technical difficulties. I think they might be able to hear you, but would you mind coming in and coming out, coming back in and out? So we make sure, apparently you can hear her, Kathy, but we can't.
I'm back.
They said apparently you can hear her, Kathy, but we can't.
Oh, can they see me?
Can you see? Also, no sound. Can you see us now? Please help us?
I can unplug my microphone.
Hear Sandra, only you. I can hear you.
How's this? I unplugged the microphone.
Now it works. Katie says now it works. Do you want to try your microphone again just to see if
if this works, we'll keep it.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Better now. We can see her and hear now. Okay. Well, yeah, I talked to myself, so I was just talking to myself for a while.
So I can give the digest condensed version of what I just said.
Oh, okay. So basically, you guys, this is really a fascinating story because I think a lot of you will be able to relate to her journey, that she was a skeptic. We can see Sandra now start all over again.
Okay.
Okay. So, well, so you start all over again.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So the basics, a little bit about me. I am a girl who over 20 years ago went through a huge fear of dying, came out of the blue, and I couldn't sleep at night, or when I had quiet moments in the day, I just was questioning my own mortality. Growing up a good Catholic girl, I should have believed in everything I learned at church, but really I just went through the motions. And Dad, airline pilot, very matter of fact. And it was one of these things where we had to see it, touch it, smell it, hear it, all those things to know something's real. So the whole world of anything spiritual, it wasn't a real thing growing up. What you guys missed, I was saying, because of my big ego, I would go into Barnes and Noble or Borders bookstore, and I'd see people looking at the areas that dealt with New Age and spirituality. And I actually felt sorry for people that were in that area, because I felt that life is what you make it. It all deals in the here and now, and there really is no evidence of anything else. So I didn't know then how opinionated I was, but eventually I figured out that we all have an ego, and most things that come out of our own minds are not empowering. All to say, this fear of quite a few years actually got me secretly looking for evidence of the afterlife. And not that I was ever going to tell anybody, because now remember, I thought people that were into this were lunatics. So I never was going to verbalize any of my findings if I had any. So I started studying my own religion. And although I found great stories of faith, nothing rested my fears. And then I started studying other world religions, and come to find out most religions believe in the afterlife. Okay, great. Still didn't calm my fears. And very secretly, I went with a friend of mine to see a psychic medium do a evidential mediumship demonstration. And I knew that it was all a scam, that it was all for money, that the people that would respond were plants in the audience.
Oh,
yeah, I was bad, Kathy. But what happened was I could see the medium working with people in such detail that people were moved to tears. And I'm thinking, these people can't be plants in the audience. And it didn't cost a lot of money. So I thought, nobody's getting rich off of this. And so I did some research on this medium, and she offered a weekend course in mediumship. And she said, if you come to my course, I will prove that you're someone who can effectively tell the deceased people around others. Now, that's a pretty bold claim.
Right.
And for a girl that had such a huge fear, that suddenly this mediumship thing really caught my attention, because I wanted to know more about how someone could know such detailed facts about people's loved ones. And so I very secretly took a course in California. I live in Massachusetts. That's where I am right now. And flew to California and took a weekend course in mediumship, which rocked my world, I will say. First of all, I lied to everybody in my life and said I was going to a business course. Absolutely. And when we met, it was only, I think, probably about 15 of us in this course. And I really wanted to know one way or another if this was real. And so I knew by the end of that weekend, I would know for myself one way or the other.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I thought I was going to prove mediumship wrong, but I still had that little bit of hope. And the instructor said, one of the things that she said is the afterlife is a very real world. It's just a different vibration that we're on, very similar to ours. People are still people. They're not energy. They are still your loved ones. And so she says, we're going to just walk through how an evidential reading is done. She says, we're not really going to do it. So she says, I want everybody to take a partner. And okay, so I picked a lady. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. And she says, I want you to hold hands. And she says, I want you to just imagine that there's this white light around you, just filled with love. And then she says, I want you to invent that there's a person standing behind your partner and just tell them the story. And then she says, medium readings usually have some different parts to them. There's evidence that comes through. So she says, just make up some things about the person that you have invented. Tell a story. If there's a significant message or how they died, just tell the story. So you're each going to get an opportunity to do this, and then we're going to take turns. So she says, somebody go first. And I have a day job. I'm a chef. My mom and I have a catering business, and we work with race car teams. So
I know.
a little wild, but that's what we do. So I feel like I'm very creative. And so in the privacy of this small meeting room in a hotel, I took this lady's hands, I closed my eyes, and literally invented that there's a man behind her. So I started telling a story. Because I got to make it up. So there's no way of going wrong. So I told her I see a grandfather behind her on her mom's side. His name was Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He had blonde hair and blue eyes and a big gap between his front teeth. In my imagination, he's puffing on a cigarette. And I thought, oh, he died of lung cancer. And then I said to her, he never told your mom that he loved her.
Oh.
And he would like you to give your mom the message that he's with her and loves her. So my mission done, I opened my eyes, ready to say, okay, it's your turn. And she's crying.
Oh my God, you were right on.
Her father's name was Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He died of lung cancer, and that was the relationship with the mother.
Oh
Yeah,
my Lord.
exactly the face I had. Yes, because if mediumship is going to be real, certainly it would go to other people, not to me.
Right.
So now I wish I could say the rest of the weekend was that successful, but it wasn't. There were times that I had good information, but times that I didn't. Mm-hmm. And I actually think because I got to use my imagination, there was no way I could be wrong, and I could just play that this information came out. Whereas if our analytical mind comes in, mm-hmm. it cuts down that channel. And now I've had over almost 25 years of exploring this sort of thing. So I realize that our humanity, that intellectual mind really can shut down that flow. But I think we all have it. I think we're all souls having a human experience, and we can tap into our divine nature. Yeah. And then from there, I mean, I was on fire. I still didn't tell anybody.
You didn't?
You
didn't tell anybody?
No, because what would they think of me? And you know what? I had a small group of friends and small group of family, and I was so fearful that if they thought I was one of these crazy people, I would lose people in my life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then again, this is all ego and all this, because it wasn't until my book came out, and talk about having a panic attack to tell the people in my community that I've written a book about the afterlife. I was so scared. And just the opposite thing happened is people were so interested, even at the races. They were race car drivers that had had a near-death experience. There were people, even the crew guys, one of them had lost a child who had died when he was, I think, 6 years old, and he wanted to know what I knew. One of the drivers' wives had breast cancer, and she wanted to know. So my fears were not valid, but who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your culture, you had that culture and you were trying to be a good girl. And
Absolutely. Yeah. But secretly, I was on fire. Like, what else can I get my hands on? So I started studying things like near-death experiences and reincarnation and just whatever else was out there. And then I found that there was something called electronic voice phenomena. Have you heard of that?
well, is this the Rinaldi?
No. Well, it is, but it's prior to me finding out about it.
Okay. So yeah. So I have to say I've been in this stuff since college. And I grew up in a religion too, but I always knew other things were available. Always, from I remember at 8 years old, um, uh, being supported by a team.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
and I work with them every day. But the way my journey was through the Akashic Records. That was by taking an Akashic Records class. It gave me, I was already using the field, but it gave me a surefire way to make contact. So, it's sort of like, well, I don't know if it's going to happen this time. These people like Sylvia Brown and that they could guarantee they'd get in. I was like, ugh, I didn't have that confidence at all. So anyway, so okay, so you are fascinated with it and you write a book. How did you hide writing the book before you told everybody?
Well, here's the thing. I couldn't. Something happened on
Oh,
my journey, and that
okay.
was my dad getting diagnosed with cancer.
Okay.
And now up to that point, I had some really great things, and I didn't tell you, but the fear had gone away.
Oh, good. Yeah, once you knew it wasn't that scary to die.
No. And I don't want to suffer. I don't like that part of what could be the dying process, but the actual death and afterlife, nothing to be afraid of. My dad gets diagnosed with cancer just about 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years in January. And through the course of his dying process, he had cancer, and it took 5 months, and he passed away in May 2010. But in that time, Dad and I became very, very close. I ended up telling him some of my journeys. Dad was very religious, and he actually embraced everything I had to say and said, promise me that you write a book on this. And, I didn't know how I'd write a book. But he finally passed away, and our family went through some of those horrific stories that you read about, siblings fighting over the will,
Yeah.
and all that. Now, it was not predictable that would have happened to my family. Not that we were super close, but we all got along, and we all said, when Mom and Dad die, we're not going to become one of those crazy families. Well, we did.
Oh.
And it was awful. And I still have some unhealed relationships for a long time. And particularly this relationship with my brother and sister. Not only did they write me off as the greedy one, like I was out for Dad's money, but I wasn't able to see them or their children.
Oh no.
Yeah, awful, awful. So not only Dad died, but inside me, depression and grief got the worst of me, because now there were relationships with people that were alive that I couldn't see any longer.
Right.
So I hit a very, very, very dark period of my life. I wasn't suicidal, but I could totally get it, that people that felt this dark, how they could think that that's the best way out. And luckily, wherever the thought came from, it was investigate grief. Investigate grief like you investigated the afterlife. What would take you, Sandra Champlain, who's usually this person you see in front of you.
Yeah, who's happy and had great energy and
right, and turn me into this dark, angry. I was repeating my stories about Dad's death and my siblings over and over and over. And I was someone else.
You were stuck in your shadow.
Beyond stuck. I mean, really, like this awful cloud was over me that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get up. And I know some of your viewers right now know exactly, and you too, what grief feels like. It's miserable. But while I was studying grief, I found the stages of grief and, some things that they say that can make you feel better, and you got to let it ride the course and all this stuff. But I actually got into some brain chemistry that was talking about how our brain makeup actually changes when we grieve, even so much as the tears of a grieving person are different than the tears that we normally cry. Wow. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I found out that our neurotransmitters that run through our body, like we have dopamine and serotonin and those kind of things, that handle our mood and our sleep cycles and all these things, they're heavily depleted when we grieve. Like our brain is trying to grasp onto a new reality that we have.
Right.
And animals go through it, people go through it, our pets go through it. We often see it. When I had 2 cats and our baby cat died, and the other cat went through a grieving process. So, I mean, it really does happen. We're trying to adjust to a new reality. But while we have such low neurotransmitters, that's what makes us angry. That's what makes us sad, depressed, forgetful, like all this whole range of these emotions. So as I'm doing this studying, I'm realizing, all the fights that I had with my siblings is because we were living in grieving brains. We thought we were communicating, but we weren't, and we were hurt. And I ended up taking all this information that I found, and then also I found some things to help alleviate the pain from grief, even just short term. It really helps. It helps build up these neurotransmitter levels. And I created something called How to Survive Grief. 70-minute audio, just me. I didn't know what I was doing, me talking into a microphone, and I recorded it on a CD, and it still exists.
Is it on your website?
It is. It is.
Okay.
If you join my mailing list, which is called the Insiders Club, you get and I don't spam people. I don't send a lot of emails, but you get a free copy of that, and also a free copy of my book, even though it says a few chapters, it's the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Because when I released this audio about grief, Kathy, people started writing me that not only did it help ease their pain and give them understanding, but I got quite a few emails that I chose not to commit suicide because of the words.
Oh my gosh.
They were able to relate all the feelings that I say are a part of grief to they're just grieving. There's nothing wrong with them. And so it was at that point I felt like I had a moral responsibility to get these words out to the most people I could. I didn't want to write a book on grief because I don't think many people know they're grieving and we're looking for that. But I thought if I could be bold and title my book, We Don't Die. Here, I can show you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and call it A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death, which is what it is. I could, with integrity, give my journey of why I believe in the afterlife. And then also very strategically, chapter 10 in the book is called How to Survive Grief. Perfect. And it is the grief audio plus more to really help people through. And then if we don't die, who are we? What is our life for? How to make the most of being human while we're here. So that was the idea. And as miracles occur, suddenly, I think when you find your life path, the right people start showing up. I never would have believed in this before, but the amount of miracles and synchronicities I had, I could only believe in that. And I had met a publisher and I pitched my story, and you know how afraid I was to tell someone what I thought I could write. And he's looking at me like, you really think you can tell people, that afterlife is real and you have evidence? And I'm like, yes, I can. And so he asked me to write what would be 2 of my chapters and submit it to him to read. And I had never written anything before in my life. And he said, write as if you are talking only to me.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So anybody who's interested in writing a book, you don't have to think you're smart enough. Just write it your heart to another person.
Yeah.
And Kathy, he read it, and he actually read it to a friend of his who was in hospice. And he said those 2 chapters transformed this guy's relationship with death. And he says, how soon can you have the whole thing written?
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
see, Lou is on here from UK, and she says, fantastic book, Sandra.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, how old were you when your dad died?
I was 43.
Okay. See, I was 21 when my dad died from cancer.
Early.
And there was nothing like that. There was nothing. Yeah. And you just bucked it up and assumed it was just destiny. It got me to read a lot of Buddhist, the reincarnation work and everything, because that made sense more than the other, like, okay, all gone.
I don't like that all gone.
It's like, well, the other way is rotate.
I know. And every one of us has to go on our own journey. And I think fear and grief and sorrow and all that can get us thinking about this. And once we get on our own journey, like, no one can tell me what the truth is. I have to have my truth. You have to have your truths. Right. We might not agree on the same thing, but it all deals with how we live life. So I don't ever try to badmouth anybody who's heavily into a certain belief. It's like, here's what I am doing, and if some of it fits, take it. If it doesn't,
well, look at the bigger platform that we're souls embodying, and where our soul may be actually in multiple places, right? It's here right now, talking to each other, but we're our essence may be embodied lots of places, but the play that is in play for you to pick the soul mission to be this for other people, to help them go through it's like a hero's journey that you went through, and you embody it so beautifully. But do you think of all the things that had to happen for you to do that, and all the people you had to meet, and all it's really amazing. It's like there's a chessboard in multi dimensions, and somebody else is moving these pieces all around, going, okay, it's now time for this person to meet her at this hotel. It's really wild.
It is, and I can't get away from it. How many times do I sit on an airplane and the person next to me is just coming from a funeral? It's like, okay. and again, I'm never pushy, but what do you say when you talk to somebody on an airplane? Oh, are you traveling for business or pleasure? What do you do? And it's like, well, I'm a chef for race car teams, and I wrote a book. So what's your book? And I always travel with one. And I tell them, and sometimes people go, isn't that interesting? And go right back to what they're doing.
But they're like, well, that doesn't fit my paradigm.
Yeah, but most of the time, in fact, I can't even remember anybody not saying, tell me more about that.
Oh, right. Oh, well, it's so cool. It's so cool. The work that you're doing. So I want to make sure that you get to talk about your radio show and about Rinaldi stuff. So,
I know.
So you guys, I'm a big fan of all of this, because I feel that we are so much more than what we think we are. And this work allows you to see in real, it's proven, and quantum physics proves it now, but the ancient religions all had it in it. The indigenous all have this knowledge of that we are much more powerful as human beings if we're grounded in our knowing than we're acting. So that's why it's more conscious. This whole work is your path to being more conscious of who and how you really can be. And you can hear Sandra has a full-time job, and she has a radio show that she's going to tell you about, and she travels all the time and speaks at events. So, and you're having an event.
I am, but we're having an event in Fort Lauderdale coming up just
Yeah.
before the holidays.
So that's why I wanted everyone to know about the way that I see this as another aspect of consciousness that validates that you really can expand to a much bigger place than you are.
Yes, yes. And one of the things, it's just like doing this interview now, is like we started at the beginning, the holidays can be a very, very tough time.
Right.
And to help empower people, even though you may be sad, you may be recalling last year when your son, your daughter, your mom or dad, whoever, your spouse was there and now there's just an empty chair. It can be very sad, but to just give you the faith that they are still with you. And one of the things about the radio show is that I started it, again, I think it was a divine plan that I didn't know about. I actually had a guy that I had a crush on that wanted to have his own podcast. And I did all the research to find out how to help him with his business podcast. And then the relationship didn't work out. But now here I was left with this information. And so I thought at that time I was so busy being a guest on shows, talking about my book, but also working a full-time job, that the big part of me that was missing was the girl who still liked to research and investigate. And I thought if I could record conversations and have one of these podcasts, that I could quench that thirst of learning and then also be able to share it with people. And I knew if I was interested in this, somebody else would be. So I thought I'd just give it away, which I'm all about giving it away. And now I have 300, going on 330 hours of episodes.
Wow, really?
That's a lot in the last 4.5 years of these extraordinary conversations that I have been able to break down into different reasons I believe in the afterlife, but so much. It's not just about evidence of the afterlife. Sure, that's what we talk about in the beginning of each show. But then it's like, okay, we've got it. We don't die. Here's plenty of stories that we go on, our loved ones go on. What is life for? So with each guest, it's talking about going after our dreams, moving through fear, moving through grief. And the blessing of talking to over 300 people is everybody's got a different view with different advice. And so while my words might not stick or might not be something to resonate with, there's going to be someone else. Some people are very, is it left-brained? That's the analytical.
More analytical. That's the engineering-like, and right brain's more creative.
Right. So we've got a lot of left-brain listeners who, when I do bring in the scientists and the physicists and the medical doctors and that, talking about why they believe in the afterlife and the things they've seen, just amazing, even living life. I mean, I had one conversation with somebody who was a quantum physicist, and I have to be honest with you, most of the conversation went sailing over my head. I couldn't get it, but I understood. He was talking about energy and where the afterlife can occur and all this. And that particular gentleman actually went out and became a medium. So, I mean, talk about an extraordinary person.
Wow.
It's just great. But to be able to have these conversations and share them has been great, because I always thought that someday I'd be traveling the world, back to the ego, and giving all these grand speeches, and how was I going to make time for my full-time job, never realizing that my full-time job of being a caterer and working with so many people and feeding up to 1,000 people a meal, and it's a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal that I can still be doing that. And then on the internet, there could be 100,000 people listening today to one of the episodes. So so I'm absolutely thrilled that I get to share and that I've learned so much. And one plug for our Fort Lauderdale event is, even if people can't make it live, on the evening of Wednesday, December 4th, it's going to be live streamed.
Oh.
We're going to have a theater event. That'll be myself giving the top 10 reasons to believe in the afterlife. I have a friend who's a very well-known trance and physical medium who will actually be going into trance and letting his guides speak through him, giving a holiday address or something about it. I would think it'll be about grief and the holidays. And then Carrie and Phil are some friends that are very, very good evidential mediums, and they'll do a platform demonstration with the audience, and people can hear from their loved ones. So it's going to be the first of its kind, and so it is going to be live streamed if you can.
So excited. Okay.
I know.
It says Noelle and Bob are here, and they said fascinating guest. And Zach Bergen said, I can explain quantum and how it relates to higher dimensions, yet it isn't necessary. It's obviously not necessary to approach consciousness via physics. He's a physics guy. Physics is channeling in its purest sense. And of course, labels limit. My 2 cents. Thank you, Zach. Thank you. Well, so where do you see the biggest growth in this? I mean, you can see you were at the IONS group with me, and that's my second international group, and it just keeps growing every year. And the energy and the people that the IONS International Convention attracts are people that have touched this higher realm, and I just love the people I meet. I mean, not only do they have great stories, because everybody wants to tell you their story, but you can actually feel the frequency of their heart. They've touched that higher knowing, and they come back into physical, and they're changed forever. Even people that have been in the military, they're changed. It isn't an ego group. So, but I'm watching it grow like exponentially. It's amazing to watch the group. Are you seeing that with your following too, and what you're seeing about what you're doing?
I'm absolutely seeing it. And not only that, is I personally am my best self when I'm around a group that we speak the same language. So you probably felt it too when we were at the IONS conference. You're with these great people sharing great things. Most of it has stemmed from trauma or suffering, or in some cases, these people who had horrific near-death experiences. But a lot of people come to it from loss of a child or some major thing.
Right.
And one of the things I spoke up there is how our suffering can really get us started on our own path.
Right.
But I see where this is all going. Like right now, and hello to everybody who's watching this right now or watching the replay, but I want you to consider, is your life filled with people that you can talk to about this? And I'm talking one-on-one live. Or are you more like me, that you follow things on the internet? Yeah, maybe there's some people in your life that you can mention this to, but then you might get that little like, interesting. Glad, good for you, all that. But I don't think we're free to be ourselves if we can't really be open. So I think, and where I see all this going is through IONS and some other groups that I feel very strongly about, like Helping Parents Heal and the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, that people will start meeting face-to-face in small groups, supporting each other. And anybody can come. That's what I loved about IONS. I found out you don't have to be a near-death
I haven't had a near-death
survivor to go to one of the meetings. I love it. But at any meeting all over the world, you can just be yourself and explore. And so as time goes on, it's my belief that we aren't just mainly being in touch via the internet or the occasional meet up once every couple of months, that we can have our family, maybe not everybody, but our core group of friends who can talk the same language. And yes, it's great to talk about afterlife and believe Aunt Betsy's still around and things like that. But the true value for me of believing in the afterlife is, number one, it can really shorten our grieving time, knowing when we close our eyes the last time, we're going to open them, our pets will be there, our loved ones, but it helps us live a powerful life. I think life is the hardest part of our existence. It can be really awful, and there can be so much pain, I don't say that this is the truth, but for myself, I think everything we experience is education for our soul,
Right.
that there's a progression. That's what I believe. And so even when tough things happen, I look for, okay, what did I learn about that?
Right.
What I learn about myself? How can I help somebody else's path? I use it to empower me when I can remember. But the day will come that we support and empower each other through life. And, you know, sometimes I get together with a group of friends and I can't complain. It's always like we talk about the good stuff and then we talk about gratitude. And I think it's a human part of our humanness that we look to see what's undone as opposed to the things we have done.
Right.
But I have a little practice that I say in my book, and I actually woke up on the wrong side of the bed today.
Oh.
Yes, even me. But I did what I say to do. It's a piece of paper, write down your successes in life.
Oh, beautiful.
And I started writing it down. And then write down what other people would have to say about you. Oh, you're generous, you're funny, you know, you care about people, da 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 da. And you know, you spend 5 minutes doing this, and then what are you grateful for? And you can even just write down a few things, and suddenly you can go from listening to that negative mind to being like, holy cow, I've got some great things. I've got some things I can be proud of. And anyways, I use that to put myself on the right side of the bed, so to speak.
Self-love is self-love is the key. Okay, so I just want to ask a couple of things because we're running out of time, even though we started a little late. We probably only have 15 more minutes or so. So wanted to ask, what do you tell somebody when they tell you that somebody died? Because I find that I find that it happens. I mean, baby boomers are dying. I mean, there's a big generation of people that are my age that are passing, and it's a common thing. And I don't really know what to say, because I don't really think it's bad. It's bad for the people you left behind, but it's not bad for them. So do you have any recommendation of what?
I do. I think what's really important, first of all, there's some things not to say.
Okay.
One of the biggest things that people do, they don't know what to say, so they disappear from somebody's life.
Right. No.
That's awful. And then other times people say, well, you know, she was older, you know, that was to be expected. Or
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
God needs another angel in heaven, or any of that kind of thing. And I think, just like you just said, to say to somebody, I'm not really sure what to say.
Oh, okay.
But I'm your friend, you've got me. I'm here for you. And then if there's somebody, you can always say too, you know, I don't know what your religious beliefs are, but for me personally, I believe in the afterlife. Are you open to hearing any of the things that I've witnessed or learned about? And then you give people permission to say yes or no. What do you need from me? You know, I'm here. As a griever, I knew how important it was to have people just listen to me.
Right.
Even if I did tell the same story 30 times, and just to love me. But there's this sense of, if you can try to be in the other person's shoes, what they have going on, and really try everything you can to understand them and be there for them, that it's like this wall goes down and they can start trusting you even more so. And you have this vulnerable, authentic relationship where you can just share. And I wrote my book to be like, when somebody's pregnant, there's a book called What to Expect When You're Expecting.
Yeah.
I wanted to have one of those books when somebody died, that it's easy to give away, and not pushy, but just, you might want to look at this, you know, you might not, but you know, I offer it to you. And that's why I say I give so many PDFs free, because if people want to buy it, they will. But just so that the information's out there, because it's a very delicate thing. And while the loved one might be having the time of their life, free of all their pains and struggles.
Right.
For those of us that are left behind, we do go through that physical grieving process, and it can be awful.
Right.
Just awful.
Right. Well, okay, so thank you so much for that, because I have that come up, it seems like, fairly often now, and I part of me wants to reassure them that it's all okay, but and a lot of times I refer them to IONS.
Yes.
Is once they're in a group of people, number one, that's another support structure for them. Anyway, that's one thing. Then I wanted to ask you to talk about Rinaldi's work. Okay, so I'll just preface this. Roberta Grimes, who's an amazing author, who was I think she still is practicing law.
Yes.
Did a presentation here in Colorado 3 years ago, and she showed some of Rinaldi's work, but I didn't know it was Rinaldi's in her presentation. And she showed that you could actually see the other dimension that people live in when they die in black and white. You could hear, they had a device that you could actually see the other dimension and hear the dimension. It was in Portuguese. It wasn't in English, however, but that this lady had created this device. So with that, I'll let you give more details. It was amazing.
Yeah, I heard about her way back in 2002 when I was on my journey.
Wow.
And at that time, she was working with parents, and she had this device that would play like chopped up sounds of human beings speaking, men and women, just blah, 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 blah. How's that for? And she would have a parent with her, and she's only given this away, so she's never charged a penny. Talk about authenticity. And she would have a parent talk to an empty chair as if their child was in that chair. And in the background, she is playing this garbled up sound. And so when the recording gets played back, you can hear the child answering the parent. It was like a conversation. Somehow, I mean, to me, that was just mind-blowing. And at that time, it was all in Portuguese. And so a few years ago, she presented at the Afterlife Research and Education Institute Symposium.
Uh-huh.
And I was blown away that she started getting voices coming through from Nikola Tesla and other scientists about the next stage of her development. And she would record, for example, a television screen turned off, or that was on a channel with just static, or a computer screen. And then when she'd play it back on her, whatever she recorded it with, all of a sudden faces would be there. So a lot of these scientists have shown their face, including Nikola Tesla, and he smiles, whereas there's no picture of him alive that he's ever smiled. Pictures of him smiling, and she's got plenty of pictures along with what these people actually look like. And they were telling her the next stages. And so she worked with parents, and many times it would be a child that had committed suicide or a terrible illness or something. And the child would show their face bright and alive, as if, and they're not pictures that existed of them as they lived. So they're not reproductions. They look very similar. She's even worked with an older woman whose husband, who died when he was in his late 80s, showed himself when he was 20.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so what's been miraculous for me is she has come to my live events. I've had 3 so far. And through the mediumship of Scott Milligan, who can sit in trance, he actually, I'm assuming they're the scientists on the other side, have been giving her instruction as to what to do next with her experiments. And to be part of this is amazing. So she now has what looks like an Easter egg mold. So you have to imagine this big egg, clear, and she'll point 4 different mini projectors, all with static energy coming through the middle. And then she'll work with a parent or whomever and film it. And then when she plays it back, and then this is what takes a long time, because even if she just films for 3 minutes, every
Wow. Oh no.
yeah,
You fell out, but I hope
I fell out. But
you're here.
anyways, so she sent me these pictures and I would post them in my Facebook group. I've got We Don't Die Listeners Facebook group. And people would say, that's my son, that's my daughter. They'd send a similar picture. And lo and behold, that's a match. And you can imagine how much that would help a grieving parent or anyone. And so I started getting these images that looked like my dad would have looked when he was a young man. Now, he died when he was 74, connected to tubes, and not looking pretty with cancer. And I just said to the unseen world, Dad, if you're trying to come through, go down to Brazil, try to put a clearer image that I could recognize on it. And, you know, I'm just hoping.
No.
Yeah. And so lo and behold, I showed the picture in when we were in Philadelphia. Lo and behold, a picture comes up of a man looked just like my dad in the Air Force. And at that moment, I went, I mean, I've got a knowing that the afterlife is real, but all of a sudden to see a picture of a loved one from the afterlife, because you can be whatever age you want to be. I think we'd pick our best age, our best weight, no glasses, whatever that may be. And even since then, there's been other unknowns that have come. And one of them is a picture of my dad just a little bit older. And I thought, this is amazing. So more experiments are to be done. The next phase of what she's going to do has got to do with water and, you know, these projections of light using water and things like that. But I am blown away. We raised over $40,000 this year to create a documentary on Sonia. So in 2020, myself and Robert Lyon, the producer, are going to capture what she's doing and do a documentary with integrity about what this is.
Let me know when you're doing that. I'll help with the marketing because this is so fascinating, you guys. I mean, the way I was introduced to it again was through Roberta Grimes, and she actually has that there's 6 different levels of the afterlife, and they're kind of like dimensions, but not dimensions. And the whole there's so much data coming through. It's fascinating, and the fact that people could actually hear the voice. I mean, they have a medium tell you things. Which I had Mark Anthony on here, and he just did a fabulous job. It was amazing. I mean, really cool. So,
he's a great guest. I've had him on twice.
Yeah, he's and what a good guy. Really a good guy. So, but that's what I'm saying is that it's one thing to get it secondhand where there's clues, right? And another thing to see a picture or to see where they're living and see with your own eyes and knowing that's what you're saying about your dad. I mean, that must have flipped you out.
Well, and my mom, my parents were divorced when I was 14. And my mom likes hearing some of my stories. And then some of them, she's like, that's a little too wild for me. And I can get it. But when I showed her this picture, I mean, you just could have seen the look on her face. Like I would have to see how she does it. Like, that's too hard for me to get, but that's definitely him.
Well, I hope that somebody does it in English. That's the only handicap with all this is that
it's happening in English.
Oh, it
now.
is?
Yeah. Yep. It's happening in English. And the documentary will be in English.
Oh,
and the words coming through from the scientists are in English. And so that's pretty cool to me.
The words coming through through her of the scientists are in English. Does she speak English fluently?
She does. Okay. She doesn't claim to, because some words she doesn't understand, but she speaks more English than I speak Portuguese.
That
She's a great lady. Great lady. And I say too, Kathy, our minds do a very good job of making big deals into no big deals. Like when you think about 100 years ago, to talk about what we're doing right now with on the computer face to face,
yeah,
no one could have even possibly gotten that this could happen someday.
yeah,
And or even flying an airplane. You know, the Wright brothers did something monumental and people called them crazy. The Henry Ford was called crazy. Thomas Edison was called crazy. And our minds, you know, believe what we have. And like right now, we're so used to this technology, we don't see the miracle in it. But we are living in a miraculous time. And if you can just get that that's part of being human, and realize that this is all possible. I mean, even what you and I are doing right now, doing this FaceTime to one another live.
Yeah, I remember the Jetsons. Jane had to put her face on before she answered the phone because it was a TV phone. That was my cartoons growing up. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff is it is your imagination, and that's why when I talk about conscious business and conscious awakening, it's getting out of the box and getting into that creative zone where your imagination can actually land the new next thing. And that's where we are right now. So tell us a little bit more about your event. So if people want to participate, is it also on your website? So if they want
It is.
Okay, great. I'm putting that up again.
Yep. Or you can go We Don't Die Fort Lauderdale.com is another way in.
Okay.
But there's 2 days. You can pick and choose what you'd like to do.
Okay.
There's 2 days that you can spend with the fabulous mediums, Phil and Carrie, and tap into your own psychic sense. And we all have it. And you can tap into your own mediumship. And even if you are already a medium, they have a really wonderful technique of how they blend with the spirit world to really get the evidence right on. Because unfortunately, too many of the mediums say, I've got an M name around you. Who is that? And that's a little vague. But when they're really good at giving specifics and teaching people specifics and tapping into that. So that's going to be on the Monday and Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And then on Wednesday, we're doing this theater event. Like I mentioned, I'll be doing a slideshow about the top evidence of the afterlife. Scott Milligan will be sharing a trance demonstration, which is just mind-blowing to hear someone else's voice coming from him with words that guy could never have made up. You know, I mean, it's authentic. And then Phil and Carrie doing the live mediumship demonstration. And that will be live streamed. So you can sign up and watch it from the comfort of your own home.
Will it be recorded too?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So that because a lot of times the live streams, it's hard to watch it all. You might get part of it, and then it's like, I've got to do this, but I want to watch this.
And everybody who signs up gets a copy, whether they sign up in person or live stream. Yeah, I'll send you the link so you can watch it. Forevermore, that will be yours. And then on Thursday, Scott Milligan will be teaching people how to close their eyes and blend with their own spirit team and talk more about his physical mediumship. So we don't die FortLauderdale.com. And then we have more events that we've got dates set, but not the venues yet for 2020. So I like live events. I like getting like-minded people together. And even at the last one, we had Sonia Rinaldi, and we were all experimenting with her. So it's great. I feel it's like pinch me that I get to be this person. As a reward, I've gotten some of the best friends ever, and it feels good.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that I got to meet you. I mean, right away, it was like, okay, playtime.
I know. I feel the same way. Thank you for all you do, Kathy. One of the things that I know you know, but maybe not everybody knows, is many people that have had these near-death experiences, they go through the life review. And we see our lives from the impact we have on other people, from other people's perspective. But I've heard from so many people that have had near-death experiences that I've interviewed that you also see the good that you've done, and you see the ripple effect that it's had on lives, and then where it's touched, and that ripple effect is so amazing. So with you, my dear, you never know how many people you've touched, whether live or on one of your shows. And it's my prayer that you get it all back and you get to see.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, this has been such a wonderful time, and there's so many opportunities for people to see their capacity and expand it. You're an example, Sandra, of people using their hero's journey, using the obstacles that they had and pushing through them. You're a great model for people to get out of their sorrow and go help other people with it. I mean, that's really, I think, a big part of our lessons here. And thank you so much. And I just, I love your energy. I'm so excited to see what you do next. Thank you so much. So everyone, if you want to find out more, go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com. And then if you are in Florida, or you can be in Florida soon, you'll want to check out a live event. And your Facebook, when we're done, I should put your Facebook link up too. So are there other ways that they should get a hold of you so that they...
The easiest, my email address, easy to get to me to, sandrachamplain@gmail.com, but
Okay.
Facebook's always a good one.
Okay. Well, everyone, I hope that you'll take a little bit of time and discover what Sandra's done. I mean, the stories are fantastic. These are real people. This is not a contrived thing. This is really what the ancients always knew, that they told us that we're just a spark having a human experience. That's the truth. And now's the time to really expand yourself and allow yourself to co-create with the bigger you, to bring it to the earth now. Because this is the time we're out of the dark ages. We can co-create in a new renaissance of humanity. So that's what we're here for. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope your event, wonderful to see you, Sandra. Great interview. See you soon, Carrie McLeod. So yeah, thank you. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.